Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that everything in your local store costs 10% less. Your phone bill drops. The jacket you wanted suddenly goes on sale. The car parts your mechanic needs are back in stock. This sounds like fantasy. But what happened in Beijing today is the closest the world has come to making it real. For the first time in nearly a decade, the President of the United States landed in China. Not for a photo opportunity, not for a speech, but to sit across from the most powerful man in Asia and negotiate the future of the global economy. What happened in that room will ripple through every country, every market, and every household on Earth, including yours. But to understand why this moment is so significant, you need to understand just how bad things got. 1 year ago, the relationship between the United States and China had reached a breaking point. America imposed tariffs of 145% on Chinese goods. China fired back with 125% on American goods. In simple terms, every product crossing the ocean between these two countries became dramatically more expensive overnight. Within weeks, shipments from China to the United States collapsed by 60%. Prices started rising. Supply chains that took decades to build started breaking apart. Goldman Sachs warned that inflation could effectively double by the end of the year. Businesses froze. Investors panicked. And ordinary people who had nothing to do with trade policy, started feeling it in their grocery bills, their electric bills, and their rent. The world's two largest economies, which together produce nearly half of all global wealth, were at war with each other. Not with weapons, but with tariffs, export bans, and economic pressure that hurt everyone on both sides. Then something changed. Both sides looked at the damage and reached the same conclusion at the same time. Nobody wins a trade war. Not the American farmer who lost access to Chinese markets. Not the Chinese factory worker whose orders dried up overnight. And not the billions of people around the world whose economies depend on these two giants staying connected. By the middle of last year, both countries agreed to step back. America brought its tariff rate down from 145 to 30%. China cut from 125 to 10%. It was not a full deal, but it was a ceasefire. And it bought both sides time to attempt something far more ambitious. Which brings us to today. On the 13th of May 2026, Air Force One touched down at Beijing Capital International Airport. 300 Chinese children in blue and white uniforms waved American and Chinese flags on the tarmac. It was a moment that would have seemed impossible just 12 months earlier. And Trump did not arrive alone. Stepping off that plane alongside him were some of the most powerful business leaders in the world. Elon Musk of Tesla, Tim Cook of Apple, and Jensen Huang of Nvidia. 3 men whose companies sell billions of dollars of products in China every single year. Their presence sent a message before a single word was spoken. This trip was about business, about rebuilding, about the future. The next morning, Trump arrived at the Great Hall of the People in central Beijing, one of the most recognizable buildings on Earth. Xi Jinping was waiting at the top of the steps. The two men shook hands, and behind closed doors, for 2 hours and 15 minutes, they talked about the issues that shape the lives of billions of people. Here is what came out of that room. China agreed to buy more American food, grain, soybeans, agricultural products from American farms that had suffered badly during the trade war. China also agreed to purchase more American oil, reducing its dangerous dependence on energy flowing through the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway currently disrupted by the ongoing war with Iran. American companies like Apple and Tesla will gain greater access to the Chinese market. And the trade ceasefire, The fragile agreement that has kept prices from spiraling completely out of control will be extended and reinforced. But the moment that will be remembered longest from this summit had nothing to do with trade figures or oil purchases. Xi Jinping looked across the table at Trump and asked a single question. He said, "Can China and the United States overcome the Thucydides trap?" The Thucydides trap is one of the most sobering concepts in the history of international relations. It describes what happens throughout history when a rising power challenges an established one. Scholars have studied 16 such cases over the past 5 centuries. In 12 of them, the result was war. Xi was not making a threat. He was acknowledging a danger. He was asking whether these two nations, the most powerful on Earth, could write a different ending to a story that has almost always ended badly. At the state banquet that evening, surrounded by the leaders of American business and the senior officials of the Chinese government, Xi gave his answer. He said, "Making America great again and the Chinese dream can go hand in hand." Trump responded by inviting Xi to the White House on the 24th of September. Two leaders, two superpowers, one handshake that the world had been waiting 9 years for. So what does this mean for you? Here is the honest answer. This summit did not solve everything. The competition between America and China in technology, artificial intelligence, and military power is not going away. The disagreements over Taiwan remain serious. The structural tensions that built up over decades will not disappear after 2 days of meetings in Beijing. But here is what did change. The direction changed. For over a year, the story between these two countries was one of escalation, higher tariffs, more restrictions, deeper mistrust. After today, that story is moving in the opposite direction. Toward stability, toward cooperation, toward the kind of predictability that allows businesses to invest, farmers to plan, and ordinary people to stop worrying that the price of everything they own is about to go up again. There is a concept economists call the peace dividend. It describes the economic benefits that flow into everyday life when conflict is replaced by cooperation. The world has been paying a war premium for over a year. Higher prices, disrupted supply chains, frozen investments. What happened in Beijing this week is the beginning of something different. How different depends on what comes next. Whether these agreements hold, whether the September visit happens, whether the handshake in Beijing becomes a foundation or just another chapter in a rivalry that has no end. But for the first time in a long time, the two most powerful men on Earth chose cooperation over confrontation. And for everyone watching from the outside, that is worth paying attention to. Because every week we tell the stories behind the world's most fascinating countries and cultures. Which country should we cover next? Drop it in the comments below. And if you learned something new today, subscribe. We will see you next week.